What's going on, family? It's Nathan Gorham here on June 20th, day after Juneteenth. Shout out to UpTop Apparel, my man Dwayne. I wanted to send out a message because here in Maryland, we have a governor who just recently vetoed a bill on reparations, and I think they were looking at doing some more studies or what have you, and his comment was, we don't need no more studies, we need action. And my thought on reparations has always been, like, it's going to require a multifaceted, multi-tiered or multiple, it's going to have to involve multiple industries. So not just cutting a check to everybody, but how can we make the most impact for the funds that are invested into whatever program there is. And my thinking is like, okay, so you need things related to justice reform or prison reform. You need things related to education, of course. Things related to small businesses and lending practices for small businesses. And then my thing, of course, is real estate. So I'm looking at, like, how is real estate, or how could something be implemented into real estate that would counter or help to mitigate some of the impacts of racism and systemic racism due to slavery, discrimination, discriminatory housing, discriminatory lending practices, things like that. And so my thought was spurred by the fact that I recently had to get fire dwelling coverage for a property that I had in Baltimore. And the fire dwelling coverage that I had to pay for this hood property was astronomical. I mean, the property itself was, could maybe sell for, $150,000 or something like that. But I had to pay for coverage based off of, I think they said the replacement value for that property was $370,000. And I was like, why am I paying insurance on $370,000 when I can't access the funds? I can't get a loan for $370,000 for that property. I can't sell that property for $370,000. So basically, I'm over-insuring my property because I live in an area where property values are lower than replacement costs. And so my thought was, okay, what if the reparations package included a grant pool that primary homeowners of their primary residence or homeowners could borrow in a forgivable loan or get a grant up to the replacement costs of their properties. If you're a black person and a descendant of an enslaved person, and you own a property in an area, you should at minimum be able to purchase or get a loan for the replacement cost of that property. Which means if you own a property in the hood and you own that property free and clear, right? And the properties in that area are only selling for $75,000. Now this is a townhouse, regular townhouse. In today's dollars, you would have to pay close to $300,000 or maybe $350,000. Call it $300,000 to be safe. You would have to pay $300,000 to build that property, right? To rebuild that property in today's dollars. You should be able to borrow up to $300,000 as the owner of that property, and it being your primary residence. Now, it's forgivable if it's a loan package, right? Then it gets forgiven if you, utilize the proceeds from that refinance or from that home equity line to invest and purchase another asset. You get it, that loan gets forgiven. If you purchase, if you do it for education, like if you have a relative that needs high school or college education or what have you, if you invest that money into education, it gets forgiven. The loan gets forgiven. If you invest that money into another asset like another property or stocks, it gets forgiven. If you use that money to pay off medical expenses, it gets forgiven. If you use that money to invest in like mental health expenses, it gets forgiven. So if it's a loan package, that it gets forgiven on certain, if it's shown that it's reinvested or utilized for certain types of expenses. And if it's a grant, you don't have to worry about the whole concept of it getting forgiven. You just utilize that grant money for whatever purchases as needed. Now, what that does is it instantly increases the household wealth for all homeowners, all black homeowners, in wherever they live, right? So even if you live in the hood, if you own your property, you automatically, your wealth in your family automatically gets juiced, right? You can borrow against that money. This is another thing it does. It encourages people. So in Baltimore, we have a huge vacancy issue. We have a lot of vacant houses, probably like 15,000 vacant houses in Baltimore City or something like that. And the city's been trying to figure out how do we solve this vacant housing problem. The issue is it costs so much to fix up a property in Baltimore. It costs essentially the replacement value, right? But you can't get it appraised for that. So if you spend a whole bunch of money fixing up your property, that money is basically sunk money because you can never extract it back out of the property. So one, it'll help solve the vacancy issue. It'll increase the wealth of every black homeowner in the city. And then as an indirect result, the property values of a certain area will automatically skyrocket. And so even though every culture can't take advantage of the loan aspect of it or the grant aspect of it, other cultures do benefit, because if you're a white person, or if you're another culture or another ethnicity or what have you, living in the area, another race, another population living in the area which is also depressed because of discriminatory housing practices or racist housing practices that have been happening systemically in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our country for centuries now. Now your community becomes a community of choice, because you can purchase a property for $75,000, even though you can't. A black person can purchase the property for $75,000, and if it costs $300,000 to, as far as replacement costs, they will automatically have $225,000 that they can then utilize. $225,000 in equity that they will utilize for other assets, investments, and things like that. And so automatically, the whole area gets boosted because of this type of program. So anyway, that's my thought. That's one of my ideas or so about reparations and a mechanism whereby it could create like a almost instantaneous global impact on the wealth of a whole race. And it would be one where not just, because one of the things that people don't understand is a rising tide. The concept of rising tides lifting all ships. And so if you have populations in your country, that entire populations where they're impoverished or they're disenfranchised or they're marginalized communities, that we all in some way, shape, or form pay a price for having a marginalized community. And I don't think that's one of the things that I think white people especially don't understand, is that it impacts all of us. The wealth gap between races and the wealth gap in this country negatively impacts not just black people. It negatively impacts everybody, especially in this economy where capitalism is king and consumerism really stimulates not just an American economy, but it stimulates the rest of the world. Having consumers able to invest into the economy and things like that, that automatically lifts the entire country. And so it's one of those concepts that I've been thinking about or considering over the past few months. So happy Juneteenth, everybody. Celebrate freedom and take advantage of it.